Get ready to experience one of the most engaging, beautiful, tense, and heartbreaking episodes of television with this week's episode of The Last of Us. After Tessa's sacrifice at the State House allows Joel and Ellie to escape, the two must now travel on foot in order to get Ellie to the Firefly base. Making it 10 miles outside of Boston, Ellie is forced to deal with death in a very visceral way, a scene that says so much with very little dialogue about who Ellie is and what she is really capable of. We also get a really sweet moment between Ellie and Joel when they come across the side of a crashed airplane, in which Ellie states an obvious fact for her, but one that really puts the weight of this apocalypse into perspective for Joel and us as the audience. Ellie has never flown, and the concept of being able to fly through the sky in a big tin is so extraordinary to her, but something that was taken so for granted 20 years earlier. The reality of the world that has been lost sinks in for Joel. There's also a fascinating discussion between Joel and Ellie about how the virus spread so quickly, primarily through the cordyceps growing in common foods created overseas and then sent all over the world. At this point, the episode takes a detour back 20 years and introduces us to Bill, played by Nick Offerman. Bill sounds familiar to audiences as back in episode 1, Bill and Frank are the ones who send songs through the radio broadcasts to Joel and left us on the cliffhanger of the 80s song playing, which means danger. Bill is a gun-wielding, big and bearded doomsday prepping recluse who has built a fortified cage around his house, which runs on generators so he can still live a semi-normal life throughout all the chaos. However, it is all thrown into disarray when one of his traps capture Frank, played by the White Lotus's Murray Bartlett. Bill is initially skeptical to let Frank into the fortress for food and supplies, but ends up letting him stay when the two strike up a romance. The rest of the episode then follows the 20 years from Bill and Frank meeting up until the present day. And we as the audience watch the relationship between Bill and Frank grow, even throwing a scene in there from 2010 where Tess and Joel negotiate a partnership with Bill and Frank. Bill needs Frank and Frank needs Bill, and that is shown in the most beautiful and human way. It's another fantastic example about how this show can detour from the main story to elaborate on two characters who are beloved in the game and make the show even more heartfelt. But prepare the tissues, because the final 15 minutes of this episode will grab your heart and try and rip it to shreds, and not necessarily in the way that you might think. It's hard to describe how amazing this episode is. It's the most grounded and authentic episode yet, showcasing love in a beautiful way, but also the horrors of how it feels when love is confronted by the outbreak and the people who are affected by it. Episode 3 of The Last of Us is fantastic and gets a 5 out of 5.